안녕하세요. 만나서 반갑습니다. Ladies and gentlemen, and fellow colleagues here in Busan, and happy Halloween. Okay, it's great to be here in Busan. I think as Bill said earlier, it's great to see your smiling faces. People take it a little more easier here than in Seoul, the rat race that we have up there. It's really nice to be here. And being from California, I really enjoy being here because I feel like I'm in Northern California again, so it feels like home. So thank you very much for having us here. Okay. Today, I'm going to talk about some of the struggles that the Korean startup ecosystem is experiencing now. I am writing a book currently on the Korean startup ecosystem in English, of course. I'm trying to successfully write the first book in English on this topic. Okay, if you go through Amazon or any other vendor, you will not see a book on the Korean startup ecosystem. It has been a great challenge thus far. I've done about 70 interviews. I've interviewed venture capitalists, fintech, beauty, et cetera, AI. So I've gone through all spectrums, as well as being an academic. In this session, I'm going to deal a lot with human resources and some of the struggles that we're having, that I've had also in academia in trying to create a fourth revolution, right, in Korea, in academia. So bear with me. I hope you enjoy the lecture. I'm very excited about talking about this. Before I start, of course, my assistant said before I gave this lecture that maybe that I'm being a little too critical, right? Or that I'm a whistleblower. I hope it doesn't sound that way because I totally believe in the Korean startup ecosystem. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for people like Im Jung-uk at the Startup Alliance. James Jung is here from Be Success. They've been some great mentors and a great help, and we're all together and trying to drive the Korean startup ecosystem as one of the leading ecosystems in the world. Okay, let me start off, please. Okay. The first thing we have here is, this is very basic. A lot of you know a lot of these things, but I thought we'd start this off. Korea, of course, has, right, one of the largest or the largest OECD smartphone penetration, right? Grandma and grandpa are on the subway and they're doing it playing Candy Crush on that thing, right? Okay. We take this for granted here in Korea because when you go to Europe or you go to the United States, grandma and grandpa don't often have a smartphone, but they certainly have it here in Korea, don't they? Okay. World-class broadband system. Okay. Some of you who are new to Korea, we had a president here in the late 1990s, early millennium, who, in my opinion, was a great visionary, Kim Dae-jung, and helped set up a world-class and leading broadband system. I don't think any nation in this world can defeat Korea when it comes to speed and sophistication of the broadband system, right? And then, of course, the next one is Koreans are early adopters, right? Oftentimes we see things that, well, we might see a year or two later in Europe or the United States, but certainly here in Korea, they're using it before then, right? So Koreans, as well as music, you know, K-pop music, certainly they're setting the trends around the world in entertainment and music. So there's no problem there, of course. And of course, Korea has the highest OECD graduation rate in higher education, which is very important. So we have a great workforce here who have all the basic skills to bring us into the middle and to the end of the 21st century. Okay. And then, of course, we have the creative economy and Moon Jae-in's now fourth industrial revolution. There's been a lot of controversy about this policy because many people say it's a waste of money. There are too many of what we call zombie startups, that the government is just promoting these startups and they're never going to make a profit or they're never going to make money. But the good thing about what Park Geun-hye had done during the creative economy and what President Moon Jae-in is doing now is that it's made Koreans know what a startup is. I think before 2013, if you ask most Korean students at the university what is a startup, they wouldn't have any idea what one was, right? So it's made people more aware of what a startup is, and it's made them draw parallels around the world and about what the future lies for Korea. So I think that's the most important thing that we have with the creative economy, okay? And then, well, you'll see a picture there. He's also been a great mentor of mine, Richard Che, there in the middle, okay? And he's with the company called Spoka. He's what we call a returnee. I know Tim Che is here today, and he's going to give you a most eloquent presentation on the Kimchi 500. He's a venture capitalist. He's also a returnee. What the returnees have brought to Korea is a lot of entrepreneurial skills that they learned in the United States and in Europe, for example, about the interaction that they've had with foreigners and other people from other countries, okay? But the most important thing that they've learned is how to cope with failure. We still have a problem with this in the university. I teach, of course, international trade, international marketing. I teach a course on startups in Korea at Konkuk University. And a lot of my students say to me, well, Professor, I'd like to be a startup CEO, but my family doesn't want me to because I might fail. So I'd like to take the civil service exam, which may take 2 or 3 years to study. Or I hope I can get that job at Lotte, where at least I'll have a job until I'm 45, okay, or 50, okay? So it sounds a little cynical, right, being fired at 45 or 50, but this is the reality now in the J-ball and the conglomerates now in Korea. So this is what they're telling me, okay? So returnees have created a lot of great companies, as you know, here in Korea, right? Bom Kim, of course, right? We have Daniel Shin, of course, at Timon, many others, and of course Richard Che here, right, who's helped me with my book, right, that I'm writing right now, who's been a great mentor. So the returnees, and then of course Tim is here today too. He's one of the leading venture capitalists here in Korea. So it's been a great impetus and a great driving force for growth here in Korea. So they're fantastic contributors of what they're doing. And then of course, the spiral effect. What we had in the early millennium, and then, well, 2010, of course, with Kakao Talk, or 2009, of course, we had Naver, we had companies, well, Nexon was, of course, created in 1994, and then we had NC Soft that was created in the late 1990s. We had this great spiral effect. So they're recycling what they were creating early on in the millennium, and now these people are leading CEOs at startup companies. So these companies have been great contributors for us here in Korea. They were just normal workers, personnel, were raised to executive or middle manager, and then have created their startup company. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about problems at the grassroots and more of what I've done with doing interviews and some of the information that I've garnered. Some of it you may disagree because I haven't interviewed everyone here. I've been going around here in the auditorium asking people, can I interview you? I asked Tim, of course, earlier. So don't be surprised if I come up to you and say, can I please interview you for my book? Okay. First thing, the problem is with the educational system. We're going to talk a little bit about that during the panel. But I'm sure you're aware of how important that artificial intelligence is now, right? And that data is one of the most important things in creating a great artificial intelligence company. With the Korean language, we're not even in the top 10 as far as internet usage, right? So what we need here in Korea is universal English education, okay? We had a very good program all the way up to about 2005, I want to say what, 2007, right? Maybe 2008, with the No Mu Hien and Kim Dae-jung administrations, where you had English teachers coming in, native speakers, and helping students learn English, but then basically it stopped beginning with the Im Young-bak administration. So a lot of these teachers have been plucked out, and it's starting to turn into a class issue that the people that are at the top of society have the best English skills, and people middle class or lower, they're not as good. So I've seen a big marked difference from the early millennium and now. As a matter of fact, I see a decline in English skills, especially with the middle classes and lower classes, right? Another problem that we have is at the university. We are not teaching, a lot of universities are not teaching artificial intelligence or fourth industrial revolutionary courses, okay? My assistant and I went through different university catalogs. Of course, it goes without saying, a university like KAIST, Seoul National University, Hanyang, and SKY are teaching the AI courses. But when you look at my university, for example, they have no AI courses. Other middle-tier universities and lower, very few AI courses and fourth industrial revolutionary courses. Okay, it's a big problem. I've already said about afraid of failure. Here in Korea, we are, of course, a high-context culture, right? And failure is taken very hard. Okay, you might see the students, I wish some of the foreigners were here in November to see the students studying for the Sunung. You see the mothers, the fathers praying even at the gate to get into that top university. So you have this inherent fear of failing here in Korea. It's basically part of the culture. Because as you know, the way Korea developed, right, we developed with conglomerates, right? A safety net. And it certainly goes with Korean history. Korea had some pretty hard times there, right? In the late Joseon dynasty and all the way through the Korean War. Things didn't start really getting a lot better until the 1980s. So afraid of failure really could be an inherent part of a culture, and it is here in Korea, okay? So that's a problem that we have, right? And then the next one, of course, is incipient entrepreneurial culture. Again, as I've already said, Korea was based on conglomerates, right? On vertical types of management, okay? They're just now starting to learn what horizontal organizations are, frankly speaking. This is part of what the Returnees have brought as far as management information and know-how. What they're bringing here to Korea is a horizontal type of thinking, a Silicon Valley type of thinking, acting quickly and moving quickly, okay? And then, of course, another problem that we have at the grassroots, because I've also interviewed a lot of students, too, that are entering the job market, and of course, I teach, I don't know, maybe 200 students a semester. One of them is called Joseon. Right, everybody knows the Joseon dynasty was the last dynasty, of course, here in Korea before we get into Japanese occupation and then, of course, a free Korea. But Joseon is a lot of hours worked, maybe 15 hours a day, working 5 to 6 days a week, and for maybe a salary lower than $2,000. Right? So you can see the cynicism in the term, right? So a lot of students have thus then wanted to study for the civil servant exams or to try to delay graduation and try to pass an examination to get into one of the leading conglomerates here in Korea, okay? So they would rather defer going into a startup company. That is a big problem because there is a lot of talent out there that the startup companies are not getting. It's a very unfortunate phenomenon, okay? Yeah, Korean startup barriers to globalization, right? Again, lack of English skills, I already mentioned that before. This is a problem because a lot of the English is based on the TOEIC examination and on what the Koreans call the SAT exam here, which is called the Sunung examination. It's a Korean SAT here. And basically, your English skill is gauged or measured on these examinations, not on analytical and critical thinking skills with English, not on English essays, not on English reading, reports, nothing, okay? So essentially, we have a lot of students, right, that get, I think at 990 is the top score on the TOEIC, or 980, something around there, get a very high score on these examinations, and then they can't write a proper sentence in English, right? This is, again, another big problem that we have with trying to create data, okay? I also have to mention, too, with lack of English skills, there have been a lot of white papers done by the government and by some accelerators, okay? And the consensus is that only about 30% to 20% of CEOs here in Korea can actually speak English, right? This is a big problem, right? Because Korea is basically a saturated market for the startup company, right? We only have 50 million people here, right? So it's just like Korea being, as they are, an export-oriented economy, right? They also need to expand overseas. And this has inhibited a lot of startups from extending overseas and to create a bigger market for their product, okay? So this is a problem that we have to deal with here in Korea to try to create universal English skills for expansion overseas, okay? It's a big problem. Another one is, of course, homogeneous workforce. I'm also going into that with legal barriers. The problem is that most Korean startups and a lot of CEOs have complained about this because they cannot hire enough foreigners in their company for expansion and to create creative ideas, right? As you know, in the Silicon Valley, we developed as a heterogeneous society. Over half of the founders of the companies in Silicon Valley are foreign-born CEOs. And it also goes with a book and a treatise that a UC Berkeley professor created, Anna Lee Saxenian created, with cross-regionalism, okay? Fertilizing both regions, right? For example, Silicon Valley and Korea, Taiwan and the United States, China and Korea, et cetera, et cetera. So we still have a problem here with homogeneous workforce. Heterogeneity creates creativity, right? Debate, right? From different cultures, right? To create a globally accepted product, okay? We still have a problem with that. I would say 95% of the workers in most startups are still Korean, right? Okay. Government regulations, okay? I've already said, right, we have this problem. The Korean government has created this OASIS program, right? You can see there. A lot of people that I've interviewed think it's very ineffectual, okay? The reason why, it takes 2 to 3 years basically to get this permanent visa to stay in Korea. So not many people have benefited from it. So you might have this great idea, right? But you can't stay in the country. So, and you want to help Korea, you want to get workers, you want to create this great startup company, but you're unable to because it may take you up to 3 years to earn enough points. And you have this great idea. So then it becomes redundant, right? You know how quickly this world works now, right? With the system that we have now, with the fourth industrial revolution. So this is a big problem, okay? Another big problem that we have with regulations is that 5 Korean workers to 1 foreign worker, okay? It's what we call the proportionality law that the Korean government still has. So a lot of people that I've interviewed feel that the government is still playing lip service with the OASIS program, that they're not really taking startups seriously. If they want to take it seriously, then they would revoke or get rid of the 5-to-1 proportionality law, okay? Where you can hire whoever you want, you can get them visas, and that this would help create a better company, right? When you're limited with human resources from only one country, how can you create a proper startup company? Okay. Yeah, I wanted to say with what's gone on, because I've interviewed a lot of venture capitalists, and you can see there with Uber and Airbnb, I put those two examples up. And in many ways, this is wrong, right? As you know, Airbnb has had problems in cities all over the world. So has Uber, right? For regulations and everything. But Korea has seemed to be demonized somewhat by this because of being highly restrictive with regulations in the past with foreign companies. So it seems to be more accentuated and more magnified in Korea than it is in other countries, with scaring away or spooking, today's Halloween, for venture capital companies to come into Korea, right? We need more venture capital here, right? And the Uber and Airbnb examples have hurt, many people have told me, as far as interviews are concerned, venture capital coming into Korea, right? Uber, of course, was restricted to the black taxis, right? And some people have accused the government of helping Kakao Taxi actually get the market while Uber was in litigation with the Korean government, okay? Airbnb, many people believe that Airbnb has been maligned here, that it can actually help retirees, right, supplement their salaries when they get older. We know that a lot of people are retired here at 50, that they're able to rent their extra space. But then, of course, Seoul has the same argument as New York City and San Francisco, right? That it's increasing the housing prices because of renting space. Sorry, I have to speed up a little bit. Okay, what is to be done? Of course, first, deregulation, right? Okay, we need to get rid of the 5-to-1 proportionality law. Okay, Korean startups need to be able to hire who they need and who they want for global expansion. Very important. Grassroots changes, yeah, that would be one. The grassroots changes, of course, is to change a lot of the curriculum to prepare university students for the fourth industrial revolution. No more multiple choice examinations, working as groups like we have at the university at KAIST, who has taken a lot of what Stanford University is doing with the StartX program, of course, right? And Symbolic Systems, two great programs that Stanford University is doing. KAIST is doing a great job, right? They are now 40% of startup company CEOs now are KAIST graduates, right? I think we need to take that KAIST system and spread it throughout the Korean startup ecosystem as far as education. Daedok Valley. I call the unsung heroes. I've been dealing with them now for the last couple of months, doing interviews down there. When we look at the biotech technology sphere, we have 35 IPOs since 2005. Okay, that is a fantastic rate. The Korean startup ecosystem doesn't even equal that with the amount of companies that there are in Korea, in Seoul, and in Daejeon, or in Daedok Valley. Okay, I would like to see us go with this Gisul Tukre Sangjang law, where a company is still in the red, but then is still able to do an IPO, because a lot of what we're looking at as far as standards are the number of IPOs that we do. We still have too few IPOs in Korea, and we still have too few exits in Korea. Okay, well, I'm told to stop here, so thank you very much for listening to me. You were a great audience.